Okay, let's do this.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Let the Tech Out. Today, we're going to talk about yoga and how technologies and AI are changing yoga, whether it's for good or bad, we'll see. But our guest today is a yoga teacher and a yoga person who is really into, I would say, the basis of what really yoga is. And then Magda will tell us something more in a second. So Magda Kwapisiewicz, she is our yoga guru today. We titled this episode Measure Your Downward Dog. And I think this is something we can, in a second, start our discussion on how we use technologies, how we measure every single thing nowadays, and if it's a good direction for the humanity, basically. Okay, so I'm going to give the floor to Magda, who will say something more about herself and her adventure with yoga. So Magda, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Magda and I'm the yoga teacher, and I'm the person that has been doing yoga with YouTube. So this has been my experience for a while. I thought I'm doing everything great, and this is how it started. I gained a lot of confidence while, not getting any direction from anybody. I did a yoga teacher training in India because I wanted to learn more. I wanted to verify my very wide knowledge that I gained online. And then I accidentally became a yoga teacher, and currently I'm teaching 13 classes a week. And recently I've learned that apparently I'm a yoga snob. So I'm pretty sure you're going to learn more about this in this episode.
So what do you mean that you're a yoga snob? Or what does the person who called you this meant?
Yeah, I think what the person really meant is that I'm so ingrained in the traditional values of yoga that, coming back to Europe, I'm kind of clashed with everything that's so new, all the yoga styles that are new, all the elements that are added to this yoga world very recently. And I just, I kind of unintentionally look down on it a little bit because I feel like they're not coming from the traditional values. And I think people that are making them probably don't even realize what the real values of yoga are. So I feel like, is that actually really yoga? Or, are we diving deep into the sports world and trying to make yoga something that it's not? So yeah, this is what I currently learn about myself. It's lovely to hear.
But you said a very interesting thing, and I guess some of our listeners might have the same experience. And I know, Tisha, that you started practicing yoga on YouTube. And I think this is something, it could be something good and inclusive, right? Because if you don't have the money or you don't live in a huge city that offers you a lot of different yoga classes, you're basically not able to start anywhere. But what are your experiences with, YouTube yoga, basically?
It wasn't exactly about money or living in a big city, because I live in the third largest city in Poland, and I've got 2 yoga studios next to my office currently. Yet I'm still leaning towards practicing with yoga, with Adrian videos, and it was more like I don't feel sure that yoga community is for me, and I'm scared that I will be judged, because I don't really look like a person from Lululemon commercial, skinny and without cellulite and all the stuff. It's just people are so judgmental when anyone with higher fat content starts to do some sport. They try to be patronizing, suggest other activities, or just look down on you. Regardless if we're talking about yoga or other sports coach or fellow colleague from the yoga mat next to you, or a runner that is completing exactly the same marathon, even though this person is 2 minutes slower, but still the difference in body shapes allows them to comment on my body, on my health, suggest that I'm not enough. And I think that's what keeps me on the mat in my living room more than the other social factors.
Well, that's very interesting. So, Magda, do you feel that, like, when you speak with other yoga teachers, do you feel that people can sometimes judge their students by their look?
Yeah, I think yoga community is really varied, just like any community is. And for sure, I mean, in my environment, I have never really had a conversation that would really evolve around students that much. And I think it's also because yoga journey is a very personal experience. So, you know, when I hang out with other yoga teachers, we would rather talk about our own experience, which, you know, maybe a little egoistic, but it's also because we do not know what's happening in a person's head. And yoga is about the head, which we're kind of forgetting sometimes, that it's supposed to be your personal journey. And a yoga teacher is only there during the class to kind of assist you, mostly so that you don't harm yourself. But, you know, the journey is supposed to happen in your body and in your head. And we're not really supposed to be, you know, adjusting you to show you what's the correct posture, what's the not correct posture. It's more about your body's different than mine. You're built differently. You might have, you know, breasts, which might make the posture completely different. I don't have any, so I don't know what it feels like. Who am I to tell you what to do in this position? I can only suggest you if you're doing something that might potentially harm your spine or make you feel unwell afterwards. But it's all about your personal journey. So we don't really talk about students that much because honestly, we don't have that much insight on what's going on in their head. But I do appreciate that. And I do recognize that a lot of, a huge problem with yoga schools right now is this kind of imagined barrier of entry. So it's much higher than trying yoga on YouTube, right? To do yoga on YouTube, you just need to have a computer, some sort of space, but not even that much, and you're good to go. But to go to a yoga space, I feel like it often, it might scare people that maybe they don't know the etiquette of the place. They have never been there before, so maybe they're imagining everybody's standing on their heads, you know, and doing some crazy asanas where in fact, you know, we will try to, I mean, at least I try to adjust my classes to whoever comes. So I never really have a very specific plan for what's going to happen until I get to know the people that already came. So yeah, I do recognize that there's high barrier of entry for yoga schools. And I'm actually getting much more participants when I teach yoga at the gym, which I guess just also proves that point because you can use your sports card anywhere you go. However, the gym gets so much more people there. And I think it's because it's just doesn't seem so serious, you know? It doesn't seem so ritualistic as well.
It doesn't feel like a community that much. It's more like you've got time, you come in, you can't make it, well, whatever. You go to another fitness class or just stick to weights or stationary bike. Whereas I feel so ashamed. I really like your class, Magda. I attended Magda's classes. I feel so ashamed that I can't wrap my life around those classes and that I'm letting down Magda, letting down all the people who are there. It is in the head and it's so much easier in the living room. And the other thing is, you said, Magda, that the whole journey is inside the head, and you're basically a facilitator through this journey. During yoga class, at the end, when you're lying down in Shavasana, you're the most vulnerable. So it's super scary when you have to enter a totally new community and you're not that accustomed to all those flows and how it goes.
Don't you think that can be also related to what's happening on Instagram? That on Instagram you have like loads of yogis in their crazy positions, and that gives like, I think, the wrong picture to people. I mean, I can see like in my yoga school, I can see those women coming to the class and it might be their, one of those first times, and then they expect already that they will be able to do, everything. You can see they're already, dressed in a lot of logos. They come with their phones, and because we have mirrors in our class as well, they already take selfies and all that stuff, and it's like, okay, all right, well, yeah, I think that maybe nowadays it starts like this, like many people have to go through this, but at the same time, because of this, people like Tisha will be telling you, oh, I'm not feeling really good and comfortable to come to such a class. I had a similar feeling until last year when I went to a summer yoga camp. And, at some point when you're like super tired because you have so many classes, it's super hot. So at some point, you don't care if you're sweaty or not, if you have clean clothes or not. Everyone is in the same position. It kind of helped me distance myself from what I have here in Warsaw when I come to class. And I have like ladies, full makeup, wearing very expensive clothes, and I'm there with my just t-shirt, and I'm like the most comfortable one. But yeah, it broke only last year. So I think it's the Instagram and like making this whole kind of faulty aura around it.
Yeah, I think Instagram must have an incredible impact because, yeah, we're just seeing, the hardest assness and the most Instagrammable assness on Instagram. And of course, people who post these things, they want to look cute. So this is literally the only yoga that we're seeing. But I've noticed that this is a case kind of across Europe, that we also don't realize that yoga is not really a physical, contrary to what it looks like, yoga is not really a physical practice. It's not a sport, contrary to what people believe. And this is when Magda the Snob comes out, because honestly, I don't care what kind of yoga mat you have. I don't care if you're wearing leggings or tracksuit that you wore in your house. I don't care if you have any accessories with you or if you don't know how to use them. I try not to use any accessories in my practice, because I remember when I was studying yoga in India, and I was basically very grateful that I even had a yoga mat to put my face on. And this was honestly the most horrible yoga mat I've ever tried in my life. But I think this also really changes your experience, because you realize it's not about the packaging. It's about what's in your head. And I think what we really get wrong in Europe is we think that yoga is some sort of performative act. And the fact that you have mirrors in a yoga studio, this is honestly Indian profanity. Like, this would never go down in India, because you're not supposed to see yourself. You're not supposed to do the downward dog and turn your head to check if you look good. You're supposed to feel if this feels the way it's supposed to feel. That's why, when you're doing adjustment, you're first telling people what they're supposed to feel, that they need to push away from the mat, that the hips are rolling towards the ceiling. You're not supposed to walk around and adjust them, because maybe they already feel that thing. Their body's just not capable of getting it closer to what the standard in your head would be, But yeah, there's huge danger in Instagram. And actually recently I've heard, which is kind of the funniest things I've heard recently about myself, that I don't look like a yoga teacher. And I was thinking, is this an insult or is this a compliment? I'm not really sure what's that supposed to mean. But yeah, so like, what does a yoga teacher look like? I don't understand. I still don't know.
Yeah. So why, what was the argument why you don't look like one?
I don't really know. This was passed on to me from a person's brother who signed up for my class, which was like a charity event, and he heard that his sister's going to my classes, so he probably had some sort of image of what I look like in my head. And then he came to the class and he saw me and he's like, no, she doesn't look the way I expected. And I'm like, I don't know, am I supposed to be offended at this? Am I supposed to be like, okay, I don't know. I think looking at the Instagram image, well, yeah, I don't have that many muscles and I'm not that tall and my legs are not that long, but I don't really understand what kind of image of a yoga teacher do you have? Because the image of a yoga teacher in my head is an old man with a long white beard who sits on a little pedestal and he's telling you what to do without even lifting a finger himself. So this is the image that I have, and if that's what he meant, I'm kind of happy I don't look like this at this point, but I'm getting there. This is the highest point I'm gonna get to, and maybe, who knows, maybe one day I'll be sitting on a pedestal telling people what to do without even practicing myself. I don't know, but this is how it's done in India. And this is the image of a yoga teacher I have. But look how different, how drastically different this is from, the yoga teachers on Instagram, where it's all color-coded and it's all so pretty and there's no sweat involved.
And they also don't tell you how much work, or for example, for how long they practice yoga daily. Because like for I'm going to say normal human, right? I think that an hour or a few hours per week, that's already, I think, a lot. And I bet that those people sometimes can just, practice for a few hours per day. But yeah, we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. And I think this is kind of giving us a faulty picture of what yoga really is. I think that another one is that if you're a yoga person, it doesn't need to be also a teacher, but if you practice yoga, it means that you need to be vegan. You need to wake up at 5 a.m. You don't drink alcohol. And basically, like you're a purist, which I don't really think that's the case.
So basically you go out to the woods and all animals land on your hand.
Yeah.
Guys, I don't know what you're talking about. This is exactly what happens when I go to the forest. Come on. Don't I look like this? A little garden fairy? Come on. No,
go ahead.
I agree with what you said. So the thing is, yoga, when you get to know it a little more deeply than you do at a yoga class, because of course time is limited and, people go to actually practice asanas. So there's not that much time to talk about the philosophy and history of yoga and those beyond physical practices that yogis do. But yeah, you're supposed to be, waking up when the sun rises and go to sleep when the sun sets. This is kind of like an Ayurvedic practice that's highly respected by yogis as well. You're not supposed to drink alcohol or eat meat. You're supposed to stay celibate. Just saying. How many people actually practice this? I don't know. But there's so many more rules to this. And the aim is to get yourself to be the best version of yourself, not only in your asanas and in the postures that you're doing, but also just as a human being. There's many, many rules to yoga that we don't really talk about. I don't know, just to give you an example, there's a concept called ahimsa, which is a non-killing concept that's very highly respected in yoga. And it basically means that you're supposed to do no harm to no, living and not really living things like plants. And there is a specific group of people in India who walk the streets very slowly, looking at what they're stepping on because they don't want to kill a bug. And they basically spend their entire life focusing on ahimsa and focusing on non-killing, which, is taking that rule to an extreme because, they're not able to have a job. They literally commit their entire life to non-killing, which kind of rules their life. So yeah, some of these rules are taken very seriously in very extreme environments. I don't think that's really possible in Europe, where you need to go to work and you need to run to the bus and you're probably stepping on some bugs in the meantime. But yeah, there's a very high barrier of entry actually to call yourself a yogi, and that's why I would never call myself a yogi, because I'm very far from it. I've breaking through this idea, this fear of calling myself a yoga teacher. So now, since I'm teaching so many classes a week, I'm okay with calling myself a yoga teacher, but I feel like I'm so beginner at my journey that it would be honestly an insult to other real yogis if I called myself exactly that same thing, because there's so many rules and regulations that I do not, follow just yet, maybe. So it's also interesting how, you go to someone's Instagram and they call themselves a yogi or yogini, which is the female version, without probably even knowing what that really entails and how many elements is involved in that. But I guess this is also Instagram and kind of passing that knowledge, passing that little Insta bio kind of idea of, yeah, just put a little yogi emoji there and call yourself that because other people do it. So I think, yeah, we're just scratching this topic on the surface. We're never really diving deep enough. because this is not the yoga we teach in Europe. There's no place to learn the deeper layers of yoga here. Unless you do a yoga teacher training, which I do encourage. But then you might end up being a yoga teacher accidentally like me. So you never know where that's going to take you.
But you can do like a yoga teacher training without becoming one. It's just to brush up your knowledge when you're somewhere more advanced and you're looking for more. Not in terms of like measuring and competing with others, but like just for yourself.
Yeah, that was me, exactly. And here I am.
But people like having labels, something tangible to hold on. So what are we doing in Europe, either in yoga studio or in fitness classes or in front of our YouTube channels? What is this?
I think yoga has become very trendy at some point. So to say that you're a yogi or a yogini, which, sounds a little weird, but yeah, kind of adds to, I don't know, maybe the cool effect, because that means that you can do some crazy stuff, maybe like stand on your hands or do mermaid pose or some other Instagram asanas. And yeah, I guess we do feel that need to name everything, to put ourselves in a box, and that also just literally goes against anything that yoga is trying to teach us if we ever really, jumped a little deeper in this, because yoga is supposed to be about removing the ego, right? So one of the biggest principles of yoga is to get rid of your ego. How are we getting rid of our ego if we're calling ourselves something that, maybe we're not there yet, or maybe we don't even realize the depths of, but we want to put a label on ourselves and put it on our Insta bio.
That's very interesting what you're saying. And I think this leads me to the next point about all these, new technologies, new equipment that comes up with yoga. And one of them is the so-called digital. No, it's not digital. It's
smart yoga mat.
Yeah, exactly. It's a smart yoga mat. It basically measures your asanas and if you're doing it correctly or not. That's the first red flag when you're thinking about it. But I'm going to just quote now their description. It goes like this: take your yoga to the next level with this innovative mat equipped with AI and built-in sensors that track your movements, providing real-time feedback and guidance on your alignment and balance. It's more than just a mat. It's your personal yoga studio and a coach.
I love it.
Is there a coach in yoga? Really?
Yeah, again, Magda the Snob comes out. I do not want the accessories. Like, my body is the only accessory that I truly need, and the same for my students. And yeah, I saw that smart mat, and literally just because of you guys, I have never heard about this thing before. I would never Google this. It doesn't even pop up in my suggested ads on Instagram. Thank God. I think my algorithm knows now that this is not going to go. So yeah, I also went on their website. I found 2 mats that seem to have a very similar system. So they're measuring your performance. They're giving you live adjustment. And my question is, first of all, why? Since you're not supposed to look at yourself in a mirror, you're supposed to feel your body, feel where the weight is. And I think we're so detached from our bodies in our daily lives that even knowing where the hand is when you don't see it, what kind of mudra your hand is without looking at it, where the weight of your body is it on the left leg, is it on the right leg, which nostril you're breathing it with? Because apparently we're only breathing with one during the day. Do you know which one? Do you ever actually check? So there's so many little intricate details that you only learn when you start listening to your body, that there is no way a mat is going to tell you how your body feels. You need to, unfortunately, disconnect from everything around you and be with the silence and with your body to realize it. And this is honestly quite a scary place because a lot of different thoughts can pop up in the meantime because you're on your own. And you know what we do when we're bored, we just rethink our entire life. So, this is quite a scary place, but I would say that, again, this very innovative concept goes literally against anything that yoga stands for. And my other question is, so first of all, why would you want to measure it? And second of all, how is it measuring it? Because I went to 2 websites of these manufacturers, and I wanted to find out how are they measuring this. So what kind of information am I actually getting from this? How are they determining who's on the mat? Because that makes a huge difference. Is it a female? Is it a man? Is it a lady that's pregnant? Is it a lady that's menstruating? Like, there's so many factors. And unfortunately, I have found absolutely no information on any of these because I just think they were not considered, like with a lot of products. So I guess my question is, how is this going to help? Is this going to make us more paranoid about being perfect in yoga, which is, again, not the goal at all? You're not supposed to be perfect. Is it going to stress us out a little bit more because maybe the mat is telling us that our alignment is not good, and now we're fixated on fixing the alignment because technology is telling us it's not right, but we feel like it's right, but technology is saying no. And is it going to fixate us on fixing another problem, or is it going to cause more problems, you know? So I think, yeah, you know, honestly, any yoga mat is probably better than this. But it's extremely interesting that people come up with that and they try to monetize yoga, which, you know, has been monetized so much already. But I didn't realize there's one more step, but there is. And this is it.
Well, probably, yeah, there is. I don't know if you also saw on their website. I think it's another kind of new invention of this producer, is that they produce those kind of rings that you put on your finger. And I was also wondering how this is possible. So, of course, it measures like your blood pressure, it measures how stressful you are, but also it measures your mindfulness. Hold on, how? Like, what unit does it take to measure your mindfulness, right? I mean,
Wow.
are we going a bit bananas?
Well, it kind of doesn't matter. A unit is a unit. It's a unit of mindfulness. And you will believe it because the well-being and weight loss and self-improvement market is a huge business, big money. And one podcast episode unfortunately won't heal it. We can talk about it more.
But this is amazing. They could have chosen so many metrics for this ring. So many metrics. And they've chosen one that's absolutely not possible to measure. And they'll tell you they'll measure it. I love it. I would love to get a ring like this and just see how mindful I am.
I'm also really curious. I mean, if it wasn't, I don't know, like $200 or $300, maybe just out of curiosity, I would get it. But I'm like, I'm not there yet.
I wonder if it measures constantly. It's like my Apple Watch that just encourages me to do a mindfulness breathing session with guided multi-sensory experience on my wrist. And I see this constant guilt trip that I'm not mindful enough because I haven't done this session in a while.
That's another thing. I think the true question here is this equipment going to make you feel better, or is it going to make you feel terrible about, what an inconsistent yogi you are? Have you done your YouTube session today? I don't think you have, because you haven't touched your mat. Yeah, I would just love to know. I would love to know what kind of user design person worked on this and what kind of data they had to tell you that this is going to be a great product, because I honestly don't understand it. But yeah, the mindfulness measurement, I'd love to try. I'd love to find out how mindful I am. What's the measurement? How do you measure it? Does it come in kilograms or is it in meters? I'm not sure.
Yeah. But now, Magda, knowing also what you told us, and maybe some people didn't know that yoga is not only about exercises, and I'm like, quote and unquote, it's about basically your way of life. How would you say that a person is kind of, moving towards, being more or being closer to yoga? And I'm not talking about exactly measuring, but rather in our heads, how can you say that, some things are changing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually a really good question, because I think in the modern world, people measure performance based on asanas. You can do a headstand. Okay, that's fine. Can you do forearm stand. Oh, okay, well, that's even better. But yeah, this is one part of yoga. But from the actual definition that is thousands of years old, yoga is, quote, chitta vritti nirodha, which means the removal of the fluctuations of your mind. So yoga as a definition doesn't even talk about physical movement at all. Yoga is literally trying to remove the thoughts from your head, trying to remove the chaos. So you can do it many ways, and that's why there's so many different practices attached to yoga. And how I would say someone is progressing is probably through being able to withdraw and go inwards, which is unfortunately really not performative and really not Instagrammable. Because if you go inwards, there is no thoughts of Instagram. There is no, just idea crossing your head that you're going to make a reel out of this, So unfortunately, progress in yoga is not something that you really can see. It's just something that a person feels in their body, that the thoughts are dissolving, that they're able to lay in shavasana, which for some people who have never done yoga is a posture that it's a corpse pose where you're imitating a corpse. You're supposed to lay flat on the floor at the end of the yoga class and not move and also not think. You're supposed to just feel. And for many people, this is a very challenging posture. And like Justina said, it can be challenging because you feel vulnerable in that posture, but it could also be challenging because you're not supposed to think and nothing happens. This usually lasts from like 7 to 10 minutes and nothing is going to happen. And you know that you're going to be laying there for 10 minutes and there's nothing. There's no simulation. There's no phone. There's no attraction, something that can grab your attention. So your head will go to the very weird place unless you lay in enough shavasanas to get rid of that. And unfortunately, in yoga, we also believe that the only way to get rid of pain is to go through it. And that goes for asanas, for yoga postures. If you feel like a forward fold is hurting the backs of your legs, the longer you sit in a forward fold, the least it's going to hurt. You just need to get through the pain onto the other side and see the rainbow, But we also believe that it's the same for the mind. So to get rid of the thoughts, you need to go through the thoughts and persist enough to get to the other side. So yeah, progress, unfortunately, in yoga is not measurable, contrary to what people think. And it's not something that you can show people. And probably most people will see that you behave differently the more you get deep into yoga rather than you're doing more crazy asanas. Although this is, of course, part of the practice, but we're mostly doing hard asanas so that we're not thinking about our ex-boyfriend, let's face it. Not because this is, we want to show it for Instagram. It's just balancing and doing something hard gets your mind off silly things. And this is kind of how yoga works.
But it's also, I think, listening to your body as well. So, for example, when I was way younger than today, I used to dance and I trained for many, many years. And it was this type of sports competition. So they didn't care if if you didn't feel good, if you were on your period or not. And now with yoga, it's like when I'm on my period, and especially the first days, instead of going in, and standing on my head and being like, I'm, super powerful because I can do it. I'm like, well, if I want to go and sleep, and this is what my body is asking for, I will do it. And I won't feel bad that I didn't go to my yoga class just because I'm on my period, right? So I think these things, just to listen to our needs, it's super difficult. I know nowadays it's because I think that as people, we're great at switching off from the body and just, going and working. So that's something, that was a hard lesson I learned, but it's definitely, now I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, I agree. And there are days where I don't feel like doing anything as well. And, I try to go easy on myself because I don't think I'm really going to grow by becoming my own enemy. There's so many, enemies and in the world in general, but in being a woman, there's so many things that are against you. Why would I be one of them? It doesn't make any sense. And yeah, you got to learn how to listen to your body. And also in situations like period or pregnancy, yoga is also very kind to women. And this also brings me back to this electronic yoga mat, which, you know, are they aware that maybe if you have your period, first of all, you can't do a whole array of asanas? You really just shouldn't be doing them. One of them is a handstand, for example. Anything in reverse you're not supposed to do. So is this mat going to recognize that this is the time of the month because you're a woman? Does it know that you're a woman? I don't know. But is it going to recognize that some things that it's suggesting for you to do are not actually advisable because it's not a real person on the other side of that screen? So, you know, and then is it going to measure you badly because you're on your period and you didn't do a reversed posture? Or, you know, perhaps you're pregnant, you can't do any twists. Like, what if you're not doing twisty enough? Is it going to give you a lower score? Like, is your mindfulness going to go down on your ring? I'm not sure, but yeah, this is why listening to your body is so much more important. And honestly, and I probably shouldn't say this being a yoga teacher, but listening to your body should be more important than listening to your yoga teacher or yoga mat specifically.
I think that the mat will show you that your mindfulness and fitness is decreased, just like my Strava suggests sometimes. And actually, one more thing about measuring each pose. This trend goes wild, and even top-line, high-end sport watches for runners added yoga measurements to their array of features. And I tried this once. I genuinely tried like lapping those poses because there's dedicated lap button on those watches, and it's like, okay, I should tap this for each pose. I just measured each 15 minutes because I can't imagine, for example, going from side plank to rock star and like doing anything with my hands. And it's just measured my heart rate, respiratory rate, and what else? Stress level.
I think I would be stressed just by knowing that my watch is watching me.
Yeah.
And apart from being totally inadequate, because I was really mindful about my respiratory rate back then when measuring, and I really tried to compare and see if this watch is measuring anything in a sensible way. It's like, what should I do with this data?
I can't tell you.
It's like numbers in a void, ready for me to ignore them.
You know, I think these pieces of equipment make me really grateful that people like user design specialists exist. I just wish that they were hired more, you know, because if anybody ever asked a yoga teacher if doing some yoga features on a watch, sports watch, like measurement watch, would make sense, pretty much anybody would be like, but why would you do that? Because really, you don't need to know how many downward dogs you did. Who cares?
Yeah.
You don't need to know the heart rate.
Working on product design and user experience, I would say that it's not designers' fault. It's more like product owner not letting them be mindful enough about user needs and inviting actual yoga teachers to the party.
Do you know what I just thought about? I just came up with a great product. You know what could work? If this was measuring your breaths in pranayama.
Oh, yeah.
Because, for example, when I'm teaching a class and I'm instructing Nadi Shodhana, which is like internet breathing technique, I cannot do it myself because I'm talking. So I cannot hold my breath because I need to say we're holding our breath and I'm counting. But if this was counting for me, perhaps I could actually get some pranayama from it too. So, you know, that's a great product idea. If anyone's listening to this, maybe you should do this instead of measuring downward dogs.
Or maybe such thing exists, but it's labeled as something really weird and trendy and fashionable.
Probably.
We're talking about it. It just made me think that, you know, this whole kind of world of like yoga tech, but also other tech and things that monitor our bodies, that all goes to this like anti-aging trend, you know, Elon Musk and all that stuff, that it's like, ooh, let's control everything that we can and let's never die and let's just, you know, be robots. That's sometimes kind of my thought when I see it, really. Not thinking that we are humans and we have bodies that tell us actually many, many things, but we just don't listen to them.
Yeah, honestly, what you just said about not dying and prolonging your life, this very much, surprisingly enough, goes in line with yoga because obviously we're doing yoga to prolong our life, especially that in Hinduism, they believe in reincarnation. And yoga is basically trying to get you out of the circle of samsara, which is the infinite life and death circle that you're stuck in. Once you become fully in yoga, you can escape that cycle. So you will not be reborn as a mouse or as a whatever, eventually a cow, and then human. So it is really about trying to escape death. But the difference is that I think how we can do this in two completely different ways is in the East, they're trying to kind of be the mindful person, slow the breath down, make sure they take care of their body, reduce their stress levels. What we're doing is we're doing the corporate mindfulness. You know, we're going to measure it. We're going to stress ourselves out about not meeting our yoga KPIs. And, you know, like, is it really going to help you live a better life? Is it really going to help you relax? Or is it going to do exactly the opposite? So, yeah, the goal is the same, I guess. Everybody wants to live. Nobody wants to be reborn as a bug, but is how you're getting there that makes a huge difference.
Maybe this corporate world isn't that bad at all, because owing to those apps and YouTube videos, we both got into the world of yoga. You became a yoga teacher. I don't. Maybe not yet. You never know. But some people who struggles with body image or issues of harassment and are so afraid or just can't manage in any other way, are too scared of going to yoga class, either in fitness club or in studio, they benefit. And even if they start with this performance act, as you called it, maybe something one day just clicks and this journey inwards begins.
Yeah, I genuinely hope that whatever brings you to yoga, you're going to allow yourself time for this inward journey to evolve and to appear. Because even if you're doing yoga with Adrian, which I actually really love, and this is how I started as well, or you're doing it just on your own by reading some Iyengar books and looking at the pictures and you're trying to do it yourself, I think whatever the journey is for you, at some point you're going to realize that your head feels different, that when you're walking through the street, you notice different things, that you feel lighter, that you are able to disconnect, you are able to think before you respond. It really calms down the entire nervous system. So I hope that whatever the journey is, and whether it's, you know, for Instagram likes or whether it's for testing out the new sports watch where you can use some yoga features, I hope that eventually it will bring you to what yoga really is about. So the journey inwards and connecting with your body.
Very good. So I like this conclusion that technologies are not bad. They can be really good when you're starting to like get you through the very first steps. And then once you're there, you can always, you know, go to your first yoga class, meet your teacher.
Maybe equip you with tools to work with your body and find a reasonable teacher, because we know that there are lots of 200-hour teachers after online courses.
Oh, that's a whole other talk about technology for teachers. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what's other inspiring things, thoughts, maybe resources you suggest for yoga noobs?
Yeah, I think the problem that I identify with yoga is that this is an extremely old practice. Extremely old. So a lot of very valuable sources are also kind of hard to understand and very hard to go through. So, you know, I have been teaching yoga for a couple of months now, very intensely. I have got a yoga teacher training course done in India, and I have seen firsthand some of these practices in real life, and still reading some of these old school sources is challenging because there's so many concepts. This is the practice of a few thousand years. There's so much to grasp, and I feel like you're a yoga student forever. There's nobody who knows everything about yoga. So although I would encourage to reach for these old school sources, to read Yoga Sutras, to read Bhagavad Gita, or to read some of the other elements that talk about yoga, I think this may really discourage people who don't know much about it yet. So I would say, this is kind of where technology can really come in and have a very positive impact. So maybe go and check out some YouTube videos that can give you a glimpse of what Yoga Sutras are without having to read them yourself, because chances are you're just going to get very discouraged because it's very ancient language and hard to understand. But, this is kind of the elements where we can really use the resources we have and make life a little easier for ourselves.
And whenever you are somewhere near Magda and her classes, go check her out. Follow her on Instagram at Magda the Gypsy and Eat, Stretch, Love as well. Anywhere else?
No, I think that's it. I try to stay away from Instagram as much as I can, and I still have 2. So I think that's more than enough for a person who's trying to stay away from it.
More Instagram, but follow us on Let the Tech Out on Instagram and LinkedIn as well. You can write an email at letthetechOut@gmail.com. Subscribe, engage in Q&As and other activities.
Yeah, any questions, any feedback you have, we're always welcome. Or if you have any ideas for any topics that you would like to hear from us, feel free to shout there. All right. Well, then, thank you so much for this episode. Thank you so much, Magda, for taking us through the whole yoga experience adventure. It was really, really great to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Thanks. So, guys, have a great day, evening, afternoon, wherever you are, whenever you listen to this episode, and hear you in the next one.